Hello beautifuls, this is Aromie here, and welcome back to Seduce Me Too. So, we're finally here, unable to leave, and James has arrived. I instantly wrapped my arms around his body, bearing my face into his shoulders, and taking in his scent. His head gently nuzzled into my shoulders as James curled over to bring my body close to him.
Thank God you're safe.
You came for me. I could barely believe it, but I did. The scent of his cologne, the texture of his clothing, let me know I wasn't dreaming. He came to find me. Now the question was, how will we both leave? James gently loosened his embrace and looked at Diana, who was standing by our side and watching. I couldn't see his expression, but Diana stared wide-eyed, as almost in fear of James. Why? As James began to speak, I felt some sort of violent power change in the room. While Diana had dominance before the incubi had arrived, it was practically ripped from her as James claimed me once again in his arms.
Care to explain why my bride is here, Diana?
Your father.
I looked up at James to see him staring Diana down, as if he didn't believe her explanation. Tightened the hug. I tightened my hug around his chest, earning a soft squeeze from him in return, but he continued to glare at Diana.
And why have you not sent her back?
Again, your father.
Your father, guy. I watched as James' eyes closed further, almost hiding his whiskey brown irises in an unimpressed and unconvinced glare.
As much as I despise my father, why do I have a hard time believing that?
From beside Diana, the spirit guard stepped up and crossed his spear across Diana's body in an act of protection. He seemed unfazed by James' glare and almost felt like he was challenging him from the power play thrashing in the air. It was like James and Diana were opposing alphas, and the guard was a protective me.
Believe what you will. My lady was about to send her back before you came.
James looked to the guard and visibly sized him up. The guard glared, tightening his grip on his spear, but remained beside his mistress. As James looked back to Diana, his hold on me tightened.
Go on.
Diana sighed softly and placed a hand on the guard's shoulder, looking at him, but the guard refused to turn himself or his spear away from me and James.
He cast a curse on your bride-to-be, barring her from leaving this world alive.
A curse?
Yes. She can't leave this world unless she dies, or until we kill the Demon Lord.
I could feel James' arms tense around me. For some reason, the look in his eyes changed from anger to almost hopefulness. Was he hoping that we would be able to leave? I hope so.
Now, I must ask that you recognize whose kindness you are testing.
Settle.
Diana tightened her hand on her guard's shoulder, almost digging her nails into his jacket. However, his eyes remained on James. Her eyes, sorry, did I say his eyes? Now submissive to his dominant stare on her.
We have been fighting him consistently and have successfully pinned him into a corner. Our next attack will be on the Demon Lord's castle, and it will be the final battle.
Succubus, if I may...
No, you may not.
The lanky man stared wide-eyed at Diana, but she ignored him. Instead, she continued to stare at James, unfazed at her harsh tone towards her companion. James eventually released me from his embrace and faced Diana and her guard, standing tall and almost looking down his nose at them.
And when do you plan to attack him?
With a nasty snarl, the larger demon male stepped forward and glared hard at James. I felt my body tense in reflex, but James continued to stand tall.
Why the fuck should we tell you?
1 week's time.
Everyone in the room shot their head towards Diana, mostly in shock or surprise.
What? 1 week?
I looked at Diana, watching her unable to turn away from James' gaze. She wasn't entranced, but it seemed as if she wasn't able to even pull away from the gaze between them out of fear.
Where is this number coming from?
Alright. I was, curse, why not? Because I'm always picking that.
I will not...
We can fight too! Okay. I blushed getting used to the feeling of the outfit. The corset wasn't tight, but it was still something new along with the rest of the garb. James, however, smiled down at me and kissed over my forehead.
We'll save the wedding dress for when we return.
Right.
Now, if you'll
Alright, this was completely crazy. I was stuck in the demon world with the man I loved, and I had to wait until the war was over to even consider going home. I held James' hand tightly as we walked through the halls of the castle, now worried and remembering my nightmare once again. I began to feel nervous, nauseous even. There were so many things wrong about this. And there were even more things that could go wrong with this plan. Kill the Demon Lord? It sounded so simple, but the war had been going on for a while. Who knew truly if this was the fifth battle? Or final battle? Did it say? The final battle, sorry. James most likely felt the nervousness in my hand as he gave it a gentle squeeze, catching my attention and breaking my thoughts.
Are you okay?
Not really? No. I couldn't lie to him. I was worried about the whole ordeal. Add on the fact that we were in the demon world where James came from, and my worries increased tenfold. James gently squeezed my hand, leaning over to kiss my head gently.
Everything will be all right. We'll get back home soon enough.
I know, but... James looked to me, staring at me with worry of his own.
Are you worried about your nightmare?
I nodded. The nightmare had mildly plagued me, reminding me of what things James could potentially do. I know it wasn't the truth, but a part of me became fearful of it honestly being the case. James furrowed his eyebrows slightly before releasing my hand and wrapping it beneath his arm, walking with me like a gentleman.
Whatever happens, I promise that no one will hurt you.
I squeezed James' arm, believing him at least for now. It was comforting to know that he was going to protect me and help me through this. We continued down the hall, led by our guide, toward our room. The others were given rooms apparently on the opposite end of the castle, while James and I claimed the ambassador's room I had stayed in the night before. At least it was a room I was familiar with. I began to space out, imagining what was going to happen. We would kill the Demon Lord, break the curse on me, and go home to be married. That was the plan, but what if we couldn't kill him? What if he was more powerful than we thought? James, however, gently nudged me, catching my attention, breaking me down from my thoughts.
Did you know that time works differently between the human and demon worlds?
I could tell that he was trying to calm me down with something else to keep my mind on. I became curious as to what he meant. Time works differently here?
Indeed. In this world, time moves slower. What would take a day to grow in the human world would take 5 days here.
I was astonished. How was that different? I began to wonder, how long had I been gone from the human world, if that was the case? As if James read my mind, he smiled at me.
You were gone for about 5 hours before we found you.
5 hours? I had been in the demon world for an entire day, but back home I hadn't been gone that long. It made no sense at all, but James continued to speak as I stared in shock.
When you didn't arrive at the hall, we sent everyone home and used our powers to make sure no one would be suspicious. Once everyone left, we tracked you down and came here to find you.
I nodded and replied, taking in the explanation. It was crazy to think about, but I guess it made sense. My mind wanted to fight it, but I had to remember this was a new world, but with its own rules, so human logic didn't necessarily apply here. We finally arrived in our room and were left alone for the night. I sat down in the bed, feeling the exhaustion of the day taking over as James examined the room carefully. He walked around the room observing each bit of decor with curious care.
So this is Lilith Castle.
I raised an eyebrow. This place had a name? Lilith Castle. James nodded, walking over to the tapestry on the wall and examining it as he explained.
This castle was the home of the first succubus, Lilith. Demons of Lilith like myself and my brothers come from one of thousands of branches of her bloodline, but we're not pure-blooded incubi. Diana, however, is a pure-blooded succubus, directly descended from Lilith herself.
My dreams flashed before my eyes, reminding me of Diana's words towards James. I nodded in understanding as he continued with a small smile.
That's why her family was able to convince the Demon Lord to make her my betrothed. They were extremely powerful and could easily charm others, being of pure Lilith blood.
I could only imagine it, remembering how Diana controlled an entire school like it was easy for her, sent a small shiver down my spine. If she was that powerful, then how powerful was she now, after so long? James chuckled a bit before breaking my thoughts.
Of course, you know what happened after that.
James finally walked over and sat beside me, softly softly wrapping one arm around my waist and bringing me close to him. I nuzzled his shoulder, enjoying the warmth of his body. I remembered clearly what happened. James chose me after all, and I chose him. We loved each other and defied Diana's attempts to take him away because of it. I couldn't have been more proud of myself at that moment in time. James leaned down a bit and whispered in my ear, making me shiver slightly in his arms.
Besides, the woman I'm engaged to now is more amazing than any princess in all of the 5 worlds.
Aww. I blushed at his words, feeling my heart skip a beat. James really did love me. We're gonna kiss him. What? How? I think we've cuddled enough when like he came into this world, and then even now, he was so sweet and caring, and I felt blessed being able to be with him, both as his fiance and physically in the same world. My worries began to slowly break apart and melt in my chest as I looked up at him and leaned in, capturing his lip with my own. James seemed surprised for a moment, for he let a soft groan against groin. Escape his lips and kissed me back. He gently pressed a hand on the back of my head, keeping me close as we kissed each other lovingly. It was almost orgasmic, the way his lips moved against mine. As we slowly pulled away from each other, letting our breaths intermingle in the space between us, James smiled. I became lost in his whiskey brown eyes, wanting so much to forever be entranced by them.
Come, let's get some sleep. We have a lot to do tomorrow.
I nodded and both of us settled into bed, drifting to sleep as our heads hit the pillow. I felt at peace, knowing that James was by my side. But my peace didn't last. What's it? I felt the void around me shift and brighten to blinding white, causing me to shut my eyes. Feathers gently brushed against my skin, and I lurched and squirmed away from them instinctively. What was happening to me? This is creepy. Diana's voice echoed through the air, surprising me and causing me to look around. As I turned my head to look behind me, a pair of arms wrapped themselves around me and held me close. What?
Don't struggle.
Settle?
Et hic habet potestatum, adoro teut non exudurum.
E credere de loco isto.
I became lost in what was happening. Nothing was making sense, but I knew that they were speaking in some form of Latin. The voices that weren't Diana and Settle, however, struck fear into my core with each word they spoke.
Settle, end this!
On Diana's command, Settle cast some sort of spell, causing his body and mind to become enveloped in a gold light. I felt every nerve in my body heat up almost uncomfortably, making me squirm slightly into Settle's arms. Settle, however, tightened his hold on me and continued casting the spell. At last, the world around me suddenly went dark, and I found myself shooting up in bed, awake.
Love?
I looked to my side to see James, shaken awake by my sudden outburst. His eyes were glossed over from exhaustion, but he continued to watch me with worry. This was the second time I woke him up like this. Damn it.
Why are angels hunting you?
James and I suddenly shot our heads towards the sound of Diana's voice, seeing her and Settle by the door. She had her arms crossed and a look of pure irritation on her face as she awaited my answer. However, I didn't know what to say. Angels were haunting me. I stared at Diana, confused as to what she meant. James sat up at last, matching her expression with irritation of his own.
What are you talking about?
I wasn't speaking to you, James.
My eyes widened at the slip. Did she almost say James' real name? Diana growled and her clicked teeth before looking at me, glaring hard at
Your
me.
dream almost allowed them to erase your memories.
My body chilled at the thought. What the hell? I was confused and fearful of what was going on. What was happening? Why were angels after me? James wrapped his arms around me, seeing me visibly shaken at Diana's words.
Explain, Diana.
Ask your fiancée why she's targeted by them. Don't ask me. I want to know as well.
How am I supposed to know? I don't know. I truly didn't know. What could I say? This was the first time I heard of angels hunting me. The dream was not a dream I had never experienced before.
Angels don't target just anyone. They have to have a reason for hunting people down to erase their memories.
Especially when their target is in the demon world.
I held my head and shook it, trying to figure it out. Did I do something wrong? What did I do to incur the wrath of angels? Diana sighed and rubbed her temple.
Well, they've been expelled from the castle for now. For how long? Who knows? However, we need to figure out why they are trying to take your memories away.
Looking up at last Diana, I could tell that this was a serious situation. Settle looked at the floor, exhausted from casting spell to expel himself. Diana growled beneath her teeth as she looked to the wall.
Another problem. Great. Can this war be any more irritating?
I felt myself curl up into myself a bit at Diana's irritation. I was already a problem that she was going to help solve, and now there was a second problem on top of that. James hugged me gently against his chest comfortingly, feeling me shrink back away from Diana.
Is that all?
From the tone of Jane's voice, I wanted Diana to leave immediately. Diana looked over and stared at James, a flash of slight fear in her eyes, before her face hardened to a cold glare.
No. Whatever you are doing to try and make me fear you needs to stop.
Alright, we're not gonna figure out what he's doing. I mean, he probably looks like he does not care, actually. Like he's like whatever. The constant whatever face. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Stay beautiful, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.